Hey everybody, I am Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. It's committed to empowering you to create more freedom in your life through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. Let's cut to the chase here. One of my favorite portions of this channel is my inspiring interviews section or session, and I've got an inspiring biz dev thought leader here. Sounds dramatic, but Trent Dressel, who's really made waves on YouTube and is also grinding in the trenches as an actual seller. Trent, thanks so much for joining. I'm curious, how's your day been? It's Q4. Have you been grinding?
Chris, about an hour and a half ago, I was out to lunch with my sister. We were driving home and we saw a policeman in this neighborhood just perched on a corner. We were driving and my sister said, "Wow, he looks like a mean officer." And then all of a sudden we drive past him. He pulls up behind us and we just both felt this guy's pulling us over. He pulls us over. And then I said, "Remain calm." He comes up. I make a joke. I have an expired registration on the car, which I got a ticket with last time I was with her. So I was expecting this big $150 ticket, made a joke, talked our way out of it. Persuasion 101. And that's what we're going to get into here today, Chris.
Dude, that's the power of sales. I feel like it spills over into every aspect of life, not to mention dating. You want to raise money for a charity. That's random. It just came to me. Sales help. So we're both passionate about sales. I'm curious to talk a little bit about cold calling and objection handling, your pillars for pipeline generation and pipeline health and things like that. But actually, I would love to start with, like, why do you love sales and how has it improved your life since you broke into tech sales?
The reason I love sales, specifically tech sales, that's what I'm in. I've been working in software sales for 4.5 years, started out as a sales development rep and worked my way up at the same company to a senior account executive. And what I like most about it, Chris, is that it's a performance-based career. And in my view, there's only three main performance-based careers. You have investment banking, you have engineering, which is basically coding, and then you have tech enterprise sales. And that's the path I've chosen. I don't believe you need to be abnormally smart, technical, funny, good looking, charismatic. You just need to be able to show up with an attitude to adapt and learn, because tech is constantly changing, and just learn how to communicate with people at an average level. And I think anyone can find success. And the unique thing about tech sales is that you get paid a significant amount of money relative to most career paths with little to no experience. And you also learn the critical skills that will then propel you forward to maximize income earning potential, whether you want to go start a business one day or just continue in your sales career as an individual contributor or leader, because communication is important regardless of the career path. And I think that you can really leverage that to speak with bigger and better organizations, to make a lot of money and not completely sell your soul. And I think that that's what I like about tech sales.
That's funny you say not to sell your soul, because some reps out there have given salespeople a bad rep. I was talking to a friend who's a product leader at a software as a service company. She does a lot of selling too, and I might have her on the channel. And she said she got this creepy person cold calling her, and her friends have experienced the same thing. And some people give us a bad rap, but don't you think if practiced with integrity, sales can really make you a better person? And what does selling with, I guess, character and coming from the right place look like from your perspective?
I might be a little creepy when I'm prospecting, Chris. So I try my best not to be.
I'd
But
be
when you're
creepy
when,
before.
when you cold call people 50 times over the course of 2 years, and they know you, you know them, when you're thinking about their name when you're not working, and you see the account and you're like, okay, that person, I know exactly who I want to be calling. That's the level you get to. But I think when it comes to prospecting, it starts with a position of, I am here to add value to someone else and make them more successful. In order for me to benefit and recognize quota relief, the more I've thought about this, if I'm approaching the conversation with you, Chris, trying to sell you, saying, "Hey, I want to sell you so that I can make 10% on this $1,000 deal I sell you," whatever it may be, then it's selfish in a way. But if you can start to put yourself in your prospect or customer shoes and say, well, what do they care about? How can I make them more successful? Oh, as a result of my solution, I'm going to help them get promoted and help them live a better life as a result of succeeding in their career. So when you lead from that place of, I am here to offer you value, it's actually selfish of you to then not reach out, So those people who are scared to cold call, scared to do the things or the rejection, I say, look, it's actually selfish of you to, one, not try and go help people that you know you can help, and two, for you not to appropriately value success, because I believe success is incredibly important. And you as a salesperson, I think you have quite a bit of control over that through your effort and through your intentionality around skill development so that you can improve efficiency and have that work ethic. And I think those are the two dials you control, the skill and will, to achieve the outcomes you want.
The skill and will, the two dials you control, that's got a great ring to it. It's definitely going to stick with me. And I was reading a book, New Sales Simplified. It's one of the top books. I found it in a HubSpot article when I used to sell at Google Cloud, and I shared it with a lot of Googlers. At the time, I was really focused. Google's Cloud is a hunting role. They're third in the market behind AWS and Azure. So it was relevant. And oh yeah, I lost my train of thought. But Mike Weinberg, the author, was saying, like, when you come from a place of you are proactively making like highly intentional cold calls where you know there is a high probability of being able to help the customer based on knowing your ICP, that's actually a great place to come from. It's a generous place to come from. And I'm curious, I wanted to dig into cold calling. What are some of your strategies and what's your mindset when it comes to crushing cold calls?
Advice I got early in my career is that cold calling is never going away. As soon as I got that advice, it led me as a sales development rep early on to really embrace it, because I don't think you just naturally like to just consistently make the calls and show it. It's almost like charging the front lines on Normandy. You know, you're probably going to take a bullet or two, but you're there to try and take the island.
Yes.
And that's the mentality with sales is you know, you're going to get some rejections, and the only way to achieve the success is by picking up the phone and calling. And once I realized that, it helped me accept, okay, well, what do I really control here? I can't control if they pick up. I can't control if they take my meeting, but I can control how many calls I make and what I say on the phone and my approach to it. So choice one is I'm going to make the calls. So I show up and I sit down and I just press call. I'm not worried about research. I'm selling to companies $1 billion plus in revenue. I'm not doing a whole lot of research. I'm sitting down, I'm calling my people, and I know what to say, and I'm just going to try and make their day better because I'm trying to lead with value. So I'm going to call them. I'm not doing too much research because that allows me to make more calls. When I get on the call, I believe it's important to have that hunter mentality of I'm going to go out and generate my own pipeline. I'm not just the people that say they don't need to cold call or don't like to cold call or say it's dead. They truly cannot maximize their success because they are waiting for other people to then bring them pipeline, which is fine. And if you have that much resource at your company, then that's incredible, and that you can still remain profitable while not having to do your own prospecting. I don't believe that's sustainable, but it would be an incredible place to be if that is your life. I think it's important to go prospect and recognize that you are interrupting people's days. You're calling busy executives. I've been cold called. I don't always love it, and it definitely rubs me the wrong way, but I at least know the other side of it. So I try and at least listen to them and say, if you don't captivate my attention in the first 10, 15 seconds, I'm going to get irritated and whatnot. So it's justified. So you can realize that you're interrupting people's days. And when I approach it, I believe the most important thing you can do on the cold call is always start the call with the reason I'm calling you is when you call people out of the blue, they don't know who you are. They don't know what you want of them. They don't know why you're calling them. If you call your friend, they see Chris, okay, I'm going to answer. I know who he is. If they see a random number, your local area code, you're already a little suspicious. So you got to tell them, hey, the reason I'm calling you is, and then offer a compelling enough reason to then earn 30 seconds a minute to then get into your pitch. And then as quickly as you can, you want to make the ask for their time, because the entire purpose with cold calling, people lose sight of this. You're not there to give an entire pitch. If you're in B2B sales, you are trying to earn the time. You're trying to set up time with them to continue the conversation, to then understand mutually, are we a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for us? And that is the ultimate meta point, is you were trying to set up an introductory conversation. I don't care if you don't have budget. I don't care if you're using a competitor. I don't care if it's not the right time. We're not talking money. We're not talking changing. I just want to have a conversation. I just want to talk to you. And that's the place I go from. And I think it helps mitigate those objections in the first place, because, hey, we're not talking money. I know you don't have any budget. Let's still talk. We can talk anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think of long-term relationships too. You never know, things change, and there's like de-risking a meeting too. I think about that. Like at the least, you're going to come away with some value. in the form of new ideas about your business and how we can help, even if there isn't a fit. Or at the least, you're going to have an open line of communication with Trent, your account executive, who talks to a lot of other companies like yourself. And so you're reminding me of the book, The Lost Art of Closing by Anthony Iannarino, who I had on the channel. And he talks about the whole premise is winning these little mini agreements. And it's so powerful. I'm not going to lie. I used to work at Oracle before Google. My buddy, I'm 29, he's 29. He just made $800K this past year at Oracle, number one of 30,000 in their apps division. And he basically modeled after that book. And basically, getting that commitment to explore, like you're saying, and even in that first 15 seconds, I wanted to dig more into kind of how you diffuse sales defenses and how you approach it. Is just getting that first 15 seconds on a cold call to tell why you're calling. Like, what specifically do you say? Do you go right into this is why I'm calling, or obviously you say your name? Like, what does it look like?
I say, hey, this is Trent from insert company name. How are you? Okay. They will then respond back either I'm okay or I'm doing well. How are you? And I think it's important to ask that question because they know that you don't necessarily really care how they are. I even get impatient when colleagues ask me in passing in the office, how are you? I say, listen, I'm going to the bathroom. You're walking back to your desk. Yeah. We're not here to have a conversation. So it irritates me in that setting. So yeah. I imagine it probably irritates them as well, but I don't care because that's going to tell me how that call is going to go because I asked them how they are. And if they ask me how I am, that's a positive sign. And I think I've already won a mini battle there because now I'm going to be able to go longer. But if they don't ask me how I am, that tells me I need to get immediately into it. So it's a bit of a signal. And it's almost like in football, an option offense. I'm going to make I'm either going to pitch the ball or I'm going to run the ball myself, depending on what they say. So, and I like that commercial. This is Jake from State Farm. I just think it's catchy. So I say, this is Trent from insert my company name. How are you? So that's really the first act, the first 5 seconds.
I just got to say, Trent, real quick, like that's brilliant. I would tell people don't do that because what you said, like it's annoying, but you took it, looked at it from a different perspective. It's a way to gauge and qualify yourself if it's going to be a good call. This is kind of ridiculous and funny, but there are parallels with sales and dating. And I would use that when going up. If I saw a beautiful girl, I'd introduce myself, ask for her name. I'm kind of rusty. I haven't been doing this in a while, and she would say it. And then I'd wait to see if she asked for mine. And in that case, you could see if someone's interested or not. I might say, oh, if she didn't ask, I'm like, really nice to meet you. And that's it. And maybe I go on my merry way, but it's funny. There's a parallel there.
No one's turning you down, Chris.
Right?
They see you drop some of those jokes on stage and you got it all. But I think that's also another important meta point is when I got pulled over by this officer, I could have gave him the best joke or looked him in the eye and made him calm. He still could have given me a ticket, but he happened to be in a good enough mood to say, you know what, I won't give you a ticket. When you approach a girl, even if you approach up with the best move, you've got your fun outfit on, you've been working out, you're in shape, she still may not be interested. Every time you call somebody too, you could have the best talk track and they still may not take your meeting. That's the reality of putting yourself out there. And that's the reason why there is upside because you are risking something as well. And that's an important realization before you even start talking. But you start with, how are you? You go into that. Yeah. I immediately then say, the reason I'm calling you, Chris, is that depending on if you're a lower level, a director or below, I'll have the reason I'm calling you, or if you're a VP or above, I'll have another reason I'm calling you, but it's the general template. So for example, if you're a VP or above, this is what I would say. I would say, hey, this is Trent from insert company name. How are you? Perfect. The reason I'm calling you, Chris, is that I noticed that you oversee the HR vision and strategy. I typically work with other executive HR leaders to help them with employee engagement, retention, productivity, and any of those priorities top of mind for your team. So what I did there is I'm selling an HR solution or an employee experience solution to HR people. You don't need to worry about what it actually does, but I'm calling the leader and acknowledging the reason I'm calling you is I noticed that you oversee this role, personalize a little bit. So they're like, okay, they at least look me up. I work with other leaders in your position, building a little bit of credibility to help them achieve these outcomes. Employee engagement, retention, productivity. If you're selling a sales tool, maybe it's, hey, I help them maximize pipeline, win rates, rep productivity, whatever it may be. the reason I'm calling you is notice you oversee this role. These are the outcomes I help with. Any of these important to your team or a priority? And the reason I frame it like that is because they're going to say, you got me. Of course it's a priority. Obviously it's a priority. I'm going to say, well, great. I figured it was. I typically help other leaders in your position. Then you kind of go into a little bit more credibility. This is how we help, but I'm really not going into too much depth. I'm just quickly, as soon as they acknowledge yes, I'm going to say, well, perfect. Being that you value data like this today, I'd like to set up a brief introductory meeting to talk about your top priorities and introduce how my company, insert company name, can help you. Are you available next week, maybe Tuesday? So I'm just immediately saying something, building a little bit of credibility. They don't even need to know my company name. And then I'm immediately going into the ask for their time. And then at that point, you're either going to face an objection or they'll say, sure, I'll take your call. And that's been my approach as of recently.
That's such a great approach. And I like that. Basically, one other way I heard it said is, does that sound interesting to you? And of course, it's a leading question. It does. And I love how you highlighted demonstrating personalization. Like we work with people just like you, and then talking about outcomes, like a challenge or a driving revenue, like a positive outcome, the carrot or the stick. And so one thing I've noticed, and that people have told me this, whether it's going through trainings and things over the years, is that brace for resistance. You might get up to 3 objections, sometimes more, and at least be willing to push through 3 objections before letting the fish go, right? And we're talking about essentially I want to dig into objection handling. How much are you, when you're making cold calls, because it seems like you do a really high volume, are you running into objections? Like what percentage of calls is it every one? And then let's dig into how you handle objections.
Objections are like oxygen in sales. It's a constant and it's never ending. So expect it, and then you won't be caught off guard when it happens. The other point here is not all objections are worth overcoming. So sometimes they're just stuck in their ways, and no matter how persuasive you are, succinct with your value that you articulate, it's not going to matter. So that's an important recognition, and you got to be willing to let go. I view objections as there's really 2 categories of objections. Category 1 is when you initially open the cold call and you say, hey, this is Trent from insert company name. How are you? They'll say, I'm in a meeting. Who are you? What do you want? I don't accept solicitation calls. Why are you calling me? Laundry list of examples. They're immediately just trying to rush you off the phone and give you a reason why they don't want to have this conversation now. And it's natural, and that should be expected. So one of my cold calling principles is, if the call ever feels rushed, it's you who are rushing the call. So early on when I was reviewing my calls, I noticed when they say, I'm in a meeting, what do you want? I say, well, and then I start rushing, speeding, and get in my own way. So I always stay calm. No matter if they're talking fast, I'm going to say, look, can I have 30 seconds for me to tell you the reason why I'm calling? So if they give me some sort of objection at the beginning before I even get into it, I typically am just going to say, look, I am calling you out of the blue. May I have 30 seconds for me to tell you the reason why I'm calling? I'm going to just basically say, I'm not going away easily. Can you just give me the time and the airspace to tell you why I'm calling, just so we can determine, so I don't waste your time, because I'm going to keep calling back. I'm not saying all that, but that's the purpose of that response. And that typically works. Sometimes they'll say no, and that may present an opportunity to get just an easy set. If they say, hey, you can call me back, I'll say, okay, perfect. I'll send you a calendar invite for this Friday using this email. Let me know if that doesn't work for you. Not always the highest show rate, but you may be able to squeeze in just a tentative accept and get a meeting set up just to potentially get a quick one. The majority of objections are in the second category. And this is after you've gone into your pitch. They'll give you, I don't have budget, I'm using a competitor, not good time, not interested, variety of reasons. The reason why you should have expected these is because they're going to come. People naturally are resistant of change, and you should understand all of the objections you'll face, write them down, and then write down exactly what you would say. Hey, we don't have any budget right now. It's next year. Oh, well, we're not talking about budget today. I'm just looking to talk about what you care about and how we can help. It's just as simple as that. So you start writing down how you would respond to each of these in the second category with just a very quick acknowledgement, reframe it a bit, and still propose, hey, well, that aside, we still can talk, right? Because we have a solution that you've already agreed upon that is somewhat interesting or relevant to what you're talking about. So those are really the 2 categories of objections. You can try your best to overcome them. I don't necessarily have a specific, 3, I'm just going to give up. I'll go sometimes until they hang up on me, and that's just the reality of sales. But I usually give it my best shot, and if I don't get it, I'll call them back in 3 months.
I love that, man, that commitment that I came up with the term recently, be pleasantly persistent. Just I feel like a lot of sales comes in following up and just being gritty. Like my biggest deal at Google Cloud was a $10 million commit, moving OfferUp off of AWS. And I remember it all started, it was my first cold call at Google. I was nervous, but I came up with like a data-driven value prop and I challenged the guy's thinking. He ended up moving to the board, but it was enough. He said, we're all set on AWS. But I challenged his thinking with some concept on global expansion. I read they had plans and Google was differentiated in that way. It was enough to get him to say, you know what, we're going to hire a new CTO down the road. And basically 3 months later, I follow up, then I get the meeting and it takes like working with the admin 3 months more. It just took forever and it finally happened. They even had like a infrastructure operation person change in the middle of it. Don't you think just sales, part of it's just like in life, if you keep showing up, eventually success will find you and you're gutsy.
There's one contact, and a story I like to tell is a credit union. It was in my book of business. As soon as I promoted to an account executive, they spent money with my company in a separate product line. So we call that a cross sell. When they're spending with product A and you're selling product B, you want to call into the company, hey, we want to consolidate with one vendor. It's just, there's naturally a lot of alignment there. I identified this credit union, perfect use case. I knew who to call exactly. I called this guy 56 times over 2 years, legitimately 56 times. And
wait, how much did you, I thought you were going to say in a couple of days. Now that's just non-human and that's crazy. But over like how, if you had to map it out, like how much space was between calls? That was over 2 years, I guess. But
it was over 2 years. Sometimes I'd call them. I have sequences built out, which is basically a combination of calls and emails over a predefined number of days. So sometimes I'm calling him 8 times over 15, 20 days, whatever it may be, and then maybe a week or two off and then adding them to another one. So sometimes a lot of calls in a small period of time, sometimes maybe a month or two off. It varies, but about 56 total calls until he eventually said, look, you caught me at the right time. I'm interested in chatting. And I think he respected that. He respected the persistence. Whether he admitted it or not, he had to have known my name and my company name. And when he happened to be in the market, it was the right timing. So it's easy to tell yourself this false narrative of they're not interested, they don't want to talk. No, to me, it always just means not right now. So you can always call back. And the worst is when you call somebody and they say, yeah, we actually just signed with another vendor. That's the worst case scenario because it means that you did not have their attention when they actually were in a buying opportunity because maybe you weren't being politely persistent enough, like you had said. So it's always important to be in their face, in their ear. It's all about gaining the attention. And then from that point, you're able to then hopefully earn at least the meeting and then gain the business.
I heard someone tell me, I think it was a manager mentor, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so sometimes I'll even say to my customer, like, hey, be in a squeaky wheel here. But I don't know if they even get it. But partly too, I think it's good to like just embrace our authenticity, and I go back to Google. Obviously, it was a formative time in my sales career. Now I'm at a startup that works with Google tangentially. But I just remember that one of their mantras was bring your full self to work. Do you bring your, Trent, your, I don't know if you're quirky like me, assuming you might be, but do you bring that into what you do and just your authenticity? Like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of your approach?
One of my core tenets is being all in. And the classic example is, hey, we're on a ship together, Chris. We're going to go take that island. Upon getting on the island, we're burning the ships. So we're either taking the island or we're died trying. And that really is the mentality of being committed to success and your targets that one must have in order to maximize potential. If you're just kind of, hey, I never want to go in the office. I'm just going to sit in my room and call all day, whatever. You're leaving it up to chance. And we find ourselves in a competitive marketplace, especially right now with the way the economy's headed. So there are winners and there are losers. Not everyone's entitled to success. And if you and I are working, if you and I are equally skilled and one of us is working harder than the other simply by putting in more time and caring more, that person who puts in more time and cares more is going to outperform you over 100 times out of 100 times. So when you sit at the end of the day saying, hey, did I really give it my all? did I achieve my targets? Do I even have targets? I think that that's why a lot of people are just confused about what's actually happening when it's in reality a very competitive environment and performance is rewarded.
Yeah, I did this. I love nerding out on personal growth, and that's part of my missions, like tech sales and personal growth. And I was at this seminar, and they said like leadership is measured truly in outcomes. So one, like sales is a good opportunity to develop leadership because you get the results or you don't, and you take responsibility. And two, it talked about commitment, which you're talking about, and clearly you've demonstrated to be successful and get to where you're at, not just in sales, but in your YouTube channel. I mean, you've really grown it big. You're making an impact. You're growing fast, and for me, it's good to see someone further down the path to learn from. And I imagine even with YouTube, you committed, you burned the ships. Like, what was that journey like when you, a little bit of a different topic, but when you started this channel?
Early in the pandemic, when I was forced to stay in my home living by myself, I naturally got a little bored and wanted different ways to express myself. And I also started watching a lot more YouTube and looking on the internet. And it, to be honest, it was really frustrating to see people that I didn't necessarily viewed as particularly more talented than me or smarter that were making just significant incomes
Yeah.
via online methods. And it was always just this elusive thing to me is, well, I know I can get in a career and make money, which is great, and you can make a lot of money. But as you think about earning your freedom, and by freedom I mean having enough money to say I can do whatever I want with my time, work on whatever I want with whoever I want, wherever I want. And as long as you're in a career, even if you are a C-level, you do not check all those boxes, unfortunately. So the path forward, at least for me, is to have, I don't necessarily like to say financial freedom because I'm not one of those guys, but I just want to make a lot of money and be successful. And in order to do that, you need to become more valuable in the marketplace. And one of the easiest ways to do that, at least as I saw my path forward, is diversifying my income and figuring
Mm.
out how to make money online. So I determined YouTube as the easiest way because I could just talk into a camera and there's the barriers to entry are basically zero. You can, a video I made recently is I just pulled out my phone. I just talked into my phone, threw it up on YouTube, and that's it. It's as simple as that. A lot of people like to think I need to get the right camera, audio, lighting, whatever. So in the beginning, it was just talking to my camera. Nobody watched, and it's so easy just to brush over. Nobody listened or watched for a year,
Yeah.
but it's actually easy to start, but it's hard to actually stay consistent 3 weeks from that initial motivational jolt you have. So that's really the challenge in it is staying consistent, discipline. And there was one point, Chris, where I put out a new YouTube video, and by YouTube video I mean an 8 to 12 minute legitimate video with
Yes.
just a real me talking, not just me like walking around dancing. It's like me talking about something that I think is going to either entertain or give somebody value. I put out a new video for 140 days straight. And
Wait, okay. So you were every day.
yeah, I was every day. And the
Incredible.
thing is, it actually kind of works against you because what I've learned is I've had a video or two picked up by the algorithm, and that snowball effect is so disproportionately has more leverage than just you posting consistently. If you can post one video that just runs wild opposed to 1,000 days straight, it's the one video that runs wild. So it's almost like the difference between small medium sales and enterprise sales is there's more leverage. But when I first started, I don't know how to edit. It's not like I have these
Yes.
amazing results that people are going to say that's what I aspire to do. I was someone early in my career that just wanted to make money online. So I had to just show up every day and build my credibility and actually practice what I preach. So you see a lot of these people talking about sales who either don't actually do sales or don't have results to back up what they say. And I think what resonated with people the most over that period is the consistency through the posting, and then also just the legitimate results, being at a credible public software company, promoting up from a sales development rep to an account executive, and then having a consistent track record. I think that resonated with people. And then the ideas are more validated. So you do that long enough, and eventually you will build that critical mass, and it just starts to, people are saying, wow, it's working. It's working. But it's not very easy to get to that point.
Yeah, and I remember seeing a TED Talk by Robert Greene. Do you know him? Like he's a
The
famous author.
48 Laws of Power guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And overnight success is a myth. Robert spent his life chasing on jobs, failing, and doing things. His parents at 30 something like, "What are you doing, Robert?" I don't know if they called him Robert Rob, but it's like, what's he doing with his life? And then all of a sudden, boom, like perennial author, TED Talks. And he claimed that everything he was doing and all of his failures and successes were adding up to give him that experience. And it reminds me of what you said about the channel or in YouTube or anything, like be consistent, float videos out into the YouTube sea, and eventually something catches. And it seems like an overnight success, but it was all adding up, So I know we had talked about doing 30 to 45 minutes. We're at the 30-minute mark. Had a couple more questions for you. I know it's a Friday. Probably want, us to launch in the weekend, have a good time.
I'm here. Let's go.
And I know your sister's in town, right? So, but
she's gone. She's gone. She's actually headed to Austin.
Oh, cool.
Headed to Austin with you, yeah.
I'm going to be out tonight. I'm going to a comedy show. I don't know if you know Brian Regan. He's hilarious and he's clean. And maybe the audience out there might be familiar. Check him out, Brian Regan, random. But I wanted to talk about like funny cold call stories. I can think of a couple like awkward moments. Oh my gosh. Like I was just curious, do you have any like that stand out to you, like an awkward cold call moment? Something just, yeah.
There's so many. I've made over 60,000 outbound cold calls. So you have a lot of stories. I remember early on calling on a company saying, hey, can I speak with Brian? And they said, well, Brian passed a year ago. And that was a nice wake up call. It was just a very weird moment initially early on. Recently you call,
by the way, Trent, I feel like and we've been grinding for a bit now, both of us. I can't say I made as many calls as you. I'm super impressed, man. But isn't that funny? I actually had that same thing happen.
It's scale. You when you do anything, you're gonna have these weird moments. So that one you can't really control. It's more of just sorry about that, and you call them. But some of the ways people reject you, I mean, I can't help but try and laugh at it. Like I called someone this morning, and for how many calls I've made, I try and say emotionally regulated. So if I set a meeting, it's okay, great, good, let's move on. If I don't set a meeting, or if I get just body bagged, it's okay, whatever, let's move on. This guy, I called him yesterday at like 5 p.m. And as soon as I call and say, hey, Brian, this is Trent from insert company name. He's like, hey, I thought this was business. I don't want to talk. I'm like, oh, well, it is business. I'm calling about your role. He's like, no, I don't want to talk. Just expecting someone else. I just don't call me by. And so of course I call him back again this morning. As soon as I say this is Trent from insert company name, he's like, you could just tell the mood. It was almost as if he was given like a horrible medical news or something like that, just based on the way his tone changes. But it's just almost finding, I don't want to say humor, but just finding light in those moments where it's not that they don't like you. It's just they're frustrated with the situation. And I think the main takeaway is just to nothing's as good or as bad as it seems. And occasionally I'll get frustrated. And then, so for example, this individual, I sent him a LinkedIn request immediately after. I said, hey, Brian, great speaking, great conversation. I hope you have a nice week. Just something like that, where it's like, he's going to see that and be like, okay, maybe I was a little unfair or whatnot, but things like that of just trying to keep it fun and expected. And there's so many ridiculous examples out there.
Yeah, I think approaching things with playfulness, particularly things that might seem scary, like calling a stranger, is really helpful. Like, so I feel like I would tell myself like little inside jokes, like, I'm going to butcher this. But do you know, there was a famous viral video of a news guy. He's like all pissed off. He's like, screw it. Let's see. Might have dropped an F-bomb. Let's do it live. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I've seen that video, but I can imagine it being.
And I would, but you had to see it. Maybe afterwards, if I figure it out, I'll link it in the description of the video. But I'd tell myself that. And yeah, I just remember one time, like a customer that clearly was the person I was calling made up a random name and was pretending they weren't that person. And like, they were just like, it was just crazy. But I wanted to shift gears to digging into your story a little bit. We could have easily started there, but how did you find out about tech sales and what, just paint a little picture of your journey, including if there were any obstacles or things you did that really helped you?
I got super lucky. I grew up in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio. I'd say upper middle class. So I had a great upbringing, which I think is a problem for a lot of people today. And I know it's a bit of a privileged belief, but those who grow up in comfortable situations with resources, you naturally get complacent. And I think you're not quite as aspirational as people that maybe experienced significant adversity or hardship, and then went on just to do just tremendous things. Like, for example, Jeff Bezos, he was adopted. And I'm sure that in some weird way gave him this extra level of motivation to just go and say, I'm going to build just a generational company. That's just one example. But I went to Ohio University, and it's not necessarily a big tech scene. I didn't know what tech sales was until I was a senior. And I asked a buddy, I said, what do you think you're going to do? He said, I want to get an enterprise software sales. And I didn't know what that meant, but it sounded cool. So my goal the whole time was to get a sales job in a big city. I wanted to leave Ohio. I was a part of a sales organization. We happened to have partner companies that came in and recruited from that organization. So that was the low-hanging fruit. I had an average GPA. I never had an internship, no sales experience. So I showed up to the career fair. I did a little bit of research. Who are the companies that are hiring sales outside of Ohio? I applied to everyone. I did dozens of interviews, and I ended up getting super lucky that my current employer, who was a private tech company at the time, fast growing, we just achieved a billion in ARR, which there's only about 60 software companies that do that. So it's been cool to be a part of that ride, going private, being acquired, and then actually going public separately, which is pretty unique. But yeah, it ended up getting an opportunity to start as a sales development rep, and I didn't have connections. No one really said, hey, this is how you do it. I had to figure it out based on firsthand experience. And I think it just starts with that target of, hey, I want to get a sales job in a big city. And then saying, okay, well, what actions can I take today to get me closer to that outcome? And that's the exact same approach I follow today with any goals I have. I get out my piece of paper and I just write down, what is my target? Whether it's a sales target, a personal target, whatever. I write down my target every day, and I take actions to get closer to the target. It's really as simple as that. And it may take years, or you may be able to achieve it sooner rather than later.
Success is so simple, and a lot of it lives in taking action and having an aim. And it's just a beautiful thing to have an aim. And I love your simplicity, man. You put it really well in terms of how you have targets and goals. And in the process of breaking into becoming an SDR, were there one or two things that really helped you? Like, whether it was the way, I actually don't believe it's the most important thing to have like the perfect resume, but more so like networking and creating more inroads and how you show up in interviews. And that's just my 2 cents. But like, were there a couple things that you did really well to end up landing the job?
It's challenging for folks out there, and I absolutely can't imagine how hard it would be for your situation if you don't have a degree or you don't come from a technical background or even have sales experience. So a group I'm partnering with to help is called CourseCareers. So I would encourage everyone to go check out CourseCareers. I think it's the best alternative. I think boot camps are very, very predatorial and try and exploit people's vulnerabilities and overcharge. So the work we're doing at CourseCareers is helping get people the education to get started. And I think the advice I would have for someone that's just trying to get started is understanding, why would somebody hire you in the first place? So if a company is willing to pay you to do a job, why are they going to do that? Most companies, especially in this environment where profitability is more important and growth in tech is also equally, if not more important, is growth. Everyone wants a growth. Everyone wants to expand, and they're hiring salespeople to help them grow and generate more revenue. So the better you understand the nature that it's a performance-based career, you are paid to perform. And the reason you would hire me is because I'm going to help your company grow and take your product to market. So when you show up to an interview and you're worried about it because you're thinking about what's in it for you, you're naturally coming off as less valuable because you're easy to replace because you don't value yourself, because you're thinking, well, what if they don't give me the job? What if they don't like me? What if I don't do the interview? Think about what's in it for them and say, the reason I'm here today is to help you. If you're my manager, I want to hit my target so that you can be more successful. The reason you hire me over everyone else is I understand exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be a sales development rep, and the incentive is pipeline. So I'm going to make calls. I'm going to send emails so that I can generate pipeline. Pipeline leads to revenue. And my goal is to master pipeline gen so that I can promote to an account executive and then generate revenue for your business. Hopefully I develop leadership traits. Maybe I go into leadership, but I still am trying to figure that out. Needless to say, I want to perform immediately and I want to grow within your business. And if you're able to demonstrate that along with just a baseline understanding of their product,
Yes.
along with you researching what their culture is, the values, and then telling stories that, hey, I demonstrated transparency based on this experience working at a golf course when I told someone they didn't need to spend this much money on this product, whatever it may be. That's all you got to do to then differentiate yourself, because it's very hard to get hired in this environment because everyone has these degrees that are no longer differentiated.
Yeah, I love what you said. It's not about us, it's about them. And that's just intuitively something I've really focused on, especially in interviews. Like, one, you want to show that you're going to help them grow revenue, right? That's how you justify your existence in sales. And two, I think on a personal level, I set like intentions of how I want the interviewer to feel. I want them to come away saying, I really enjoyed that experience. Like Chris or Trent, like, they're awesome. I could totally see myself working with them. They let me ask all the questions I needed to ask. They answered my questions and gave me confidence in making the right choice. And I just remember one, I mean, it's a little bit of a humble brag, but like when I was at Oracle going from SDR to AE for the first time, I had a guy, now he was, take it with a grain of salt, he was a young new manager, but he said like that was the greatest interview I ever had. Now he just became a manager, so that's not like, yeah, but I was proud of that.
One of one.
Because I knew exactly, yeah. So funny, but I knew what he wanted, like was looking for, and what his success looked like, and you hit on it, like Mr. Manager or Mrs. Manager, I want to help you get to your numbers and be successful. So amazing point. And you know what? I don't know if you put a video out there on this. I mean, I just recently did, but someone emailed me from the channel like, is now a good time to get into tech sales in a recession? And there's some data that shows, I think, that unemployment in tech sales is going down, or in tech, and don't quote me exactly on it, but what are your thoughts, Trent, have you heard people, I'm sure, like reaching out to you about that? What are your thoughts on the market, and is now a good time for tech sales?
It's important to look at the backdrop and just cause and effect and what's happening at the macro. Then we can drill down into the micro and specifically opportunities in getting hired in jobs. So what I've heard more about than anything is interest rates. So I didn't understand what this meant. So I had to start studying what are interest rates and what does that mean? What is the Fed? What is their purpose? And the reason why everything's happening in the economy right now is because interest rates are increasing. And the reason why interest rates are increasing, it's in an effort to make the cost of borrowing more expensive in order to decrease inflation. So inflation, the cost of goods, services, gas, or groceries is increasing. So in order to curb inflation and decrease the cost of goods, we must increase interest rates so the cost of borrowing is more expensive, which leads to companies hiring less, which leads to companies having to charge more. And this is especially amplified in tech companies, because tech companies are rewarded for growth and future profitability. And
Yeah.
historically, it's been grow at all cost. And now it's, you got to demonstrate profitability, which basically means you're not losing money. And a lot of these companies are just growing, get users, and lose money. So the tech environment has been impacted. And that's why you see companies such as even the Amazons of the world and the Meta and specifically laying off 10% of the workforce. So at the top level, these world-class companies are doing layoffs. Downstream, it's happening. When I saw this happen with Twilio and DocuSign about 2 months ago in September, when they laid off 10%, I said, well, Twilio is a great software company. And if that's happening, that's not a good sign. So that's now started to work its way through the system, and these companies are having to adapt. And I don't believe things are going to get better anytime soon. And the result of this is that these tech companies are now, it's harder to sell because every dollar is now accounted for. These companies are hiring freezing. So naturally, there's less open positions, which means if there's more applicants and less open positions, it's more competitive. So it's harder to get in tech sales. But what I will say is those who are able to persevere through this time and get really good at selling in a challenging environment and understand the cause and effect through this time, you will then disproportionately benefit when we get into the next upcycle. It may be in 2028, and things can't always be good. So it's keeping that perspective. So what I'd say in conclusion is ignore the noise and play the long game. So there's going to be a lot of people trying to pull at you. So play the long game, and just keep your head down and stay patient. And that's what I would recommend to anyone out there. I think now's as good a time of ever to get started in tech. And if you want to work in tech, go get in tech, because there's no point in going in working a retail sales job when you eventually want to do tech. You may as well just go to tech. It's going to be hard, and play the long game, and I think you'll be rewarded.
Amen. I totally agree with that. The Church of Tech Sales here. So easy. But I think that it is a long game perspective, and it's easy to fall into fear in life, especially with what seems to be a slowdown and recession. But thinking rationally and long term, I was reading something about the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicting tech jobs to continue to grow over the next 10 years. And analysts like Gartner, they make predictions about where data and AI and cybersecurity are heading in all these tech companies. And I mean, it's long-term going to grow, and just weathering the storm. And I think adapting how we think about applying to companies that maybe they help other companies become more profitable. It's like a AWS cost optimization software that is actually going to maybe do even better in a downturn. Just like, Zoom boomed in the pandemic because it met a new need that was introduced. So imagine, like selling at Zoom, you're probably raking in cash and an order taker. So I'm on the same page with you, my friend. And I just got 2 more questions for you.
Let me say one more thing briefly on that point, Chris, because
Yeah.
I think it's an important call out. Is now's the time for every employee to look themselves in the face and truly be objective and say, how am I helping my company make more money
Yeah.
or save more money? And that's what companies value right now. Now's not the time to be erratic and emotional and say, they're not letting me work remote, therefore I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
It's no longer an employee's market, unfortunately. The firms now have more leverage. So now, in my view, is the time to continue to build trust around you and just focus on performance, keep your head down, because things I believe are going to continue to get rocky. So just ask yourself, how are you making more money or helping them save money? And if you're not doing either of those things, then you are very replaceable.
And now is a huge opportunity just at a high level to build wealth and to find new income streams, like you mentioned with YouTube or other side hustles. Because if you can make money now and maybe even invest and buy when things are low, and I take it with a grain of salt, I should put a disclaimer, I'm no financial guru, but I just think there's an opportunity. Start making more cash and things will move upward again in the future, and that'll be great. So yeah, great point. And just 2 kind of personal questions, and we can finish with the call to action. What do you draw inspiration from? That's so broad, but maybe there's like a leader or a book or what do you draw inspiration from in life, really? And it probably spills over into sales too.
The future is my drug nowadays. I have a very addictive personality, and I think I can use that to my advantage by just becoming obsessed with things. And what I think a lot about is my future and what I want that to look like. And I think that there's different stages of life. And this is one of the most common comments I get from people on YouTube is, it seems like you are willing to sacrifice what I am not willing to sacrifice. So for example, in your mid-20s as a guy, I think a lot of us have aspirations to be successful. We're on some mission. We want to make money. We want to prove everyone we're worthy, whatever it may be. And you set these arbitrary milestones, millionaire by 30 or retire by 40, whatever it may be for you. Everyone's got that goalpost. And so everyone has the same amount of time in a day. So when you see those people, you say, well, how are they accomplishing so much? It's important to say, well, how am I even spending my time in the first place? And the 3 core pillars is health, wealth, and relationships. I think health is really important because they say if you are sick, and it's basically if you don't feel good, then nothing else matters. I think relationships is also incredibly important to just mental health and living a well-rounded life. And then wealth is also important so that you can live life on your terms. I'm in a place, 27, where I am willing to sacrifice relationships to an extent so that I can maximize my potential when it comes to wealth, so that when I'm in a different stage of life, when I'm ready to have a family and decide, well, hey, would I like to decide what zip code I want to live in? Would I like to have the optionality of what school I send my child to? And if you're not sacrificing today, the marketplace is simply too competitive and you will not be able to live life on your terms, and it will be too late when you get to that point. So I draw inspiration from the future and thinking about how I want to live. And in order to get to that point, it's critical to get my money right and to gain the relevant experience and connections so that when I am ready to really go disproportionately all in on my own opportunity, it's that will give me a chance to actually achieve a massive outcome, opposed to just being ordinary and just continuing forward on some track. So that's why I'm willing to sacrifice at this stage to set myself up, my future self up. And it's that excitement of saying, well, how far could I take this? What could my potential be that keeps me going? And that's where I draw a lot of inspiration from.
And that is inspiring, I think, to me and to the audience, for those in tech sales, to be reminded that the grind today will create a huge payoff beyond what you could ever imagine in the future. Not just the money, but the connections and the skill sets and the self-esteem that all comes with grinding and growing and learning in sales. So really great nugget. And you kind of hit on my second part of the question, or second question there, which is, where do you see yourself? What's your vision? But maybe you didn't paint a very clear picture. Like, do you see yourself being an entrepreneur? And I mean, you are now, but like a CEO, or what are your bigger dreams?
My bigger dreams in the near term are to become a productive enterprise rep, enterprise account executive, and gain that experience selling to big orgs, make as much money from my career as I can, in addition to growing my online income. And I save all my online income while saving my career income, paying for my expenses, and investing it. So it's just a matter of time of investing the income I make from my career, and then just saving the career income in cash, so that when that war chest of online income is great enough, and then when the career income investments and the online income is able to satisfy, I could lose my job tomorrow and sustain life for a long period of time. But it's growing to a point where, and gaining the experience and skills and connections, so that when you are ready to start your own opportunity and create a business for yourself, a real business that can scale and grow, not just, I've thought of an idea, I've made a digital product and sell it. You can do that very easily today, and it's possible, and it's very lucrative. But creating a real product that you can then start to build a team around, that's my aspiration, because that to me is the only way to true freedom. Is you must have an asset that you have significant equity in, that appreciates in value while also distributes ongoing cash flow, owner's dividends, whatever you want to call it. So I think that to me is the vehicle I see. And I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, massive outcome or whatever it may be, but it's just starting that thing and then seeing how far you can take it. And that's the excitement of the potential, because that to me opens up possibilities that is not possible for the average employee. Even if you are the top sales rep at Oracle, you're still limited in many senses. So to me, it's owning your own business, having a team around it, and being very mission oriented, not just following trends. So that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm patient, and it's just accumulating as much money right now and resources so that we can then push that all into an idea when the time is right.
Beautiful note to end on, and I'll be cheering you on, man, watching you grow and fulfilling those dreams. And I appreciate you coming on the channel. And I'm sure a lot of the people that tuned in live are already subscribed to your channel, but I would encourage anyone subscribe to Trent Dressel. You know, I'm subscribed myself. He's putting out amazing content. And Trent, do you have any other resources? I know you mentioned like CourseCareers, but also don't you have like frameworks and a website? What are some areas where people can connect with you and check out the value that you're putting out there?
The final note I would end on, and it's a lesson I learned recently, it's separating your sense of self-worth from your performance. Us as driven, competitive males that want to be successful, it's really easy to associate our sense of worth with, I got this promotion, I'm a big account executive, I have this big OTE, I'm special, look at me. The more you can disconnect your sense of self-worth and how you project yourself separate from that, and just you as the person, I think the better you're able to live life on your terms and think more objectively, and allow you to maximize your own potential.
I love that. And, I've got the Google shirt on today. I happen to wear it, but I noticed that is was a growing pain I had to go through. I really did attach my self-esteem to Google. I was really tied to it. The pandemic happened. I struggled to hit numbers, just like not everyone. Some people crush their numbers, but, and I let that idol crash of like tying myself to Google. So Great point, like separating self-worth from performance. Awesome note to end on. And yeah, any other, Trent, calls to action though, in terms of, checking out your stuff or anything else you want to share as we sign off?
The only call to action is write down your targets every day. Write down your targets, and I think that will put you on the path to success or whatever your goals are.
Awesome. Write down those targets, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and happy selling and happy living.